heavy,
bored.
All right, let's get to the manifesto. Let us get to the manifesto. As I said in the monologue, right? Who writes manifestos? Extremists write manifestos. Okay. That's who writes manifestos. And guess what? Manifestos are usually fucking rants, right? Unthought out rants. I'm going to give you an overview of some of this. The manifesto is called Four Changes. Okay, so in the opening section of this, it says, Four Changes was written in the summer of 69 in response to an evident need for a few practical and visionary suggestions. Blah, 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 blah. It was printed and distributed widely, free, through the help of Alan Watts and Robert Shapiro. Again, if people don't know who Alan Watts is, he's kind of obsessed with Eastern philosophy, was a figure in the 70s and 60s. Several other free editions circulated, including one beautifully printed version by Noel Young of Santa Barbara. Far from perfect, and in some parts already outdated, it may still be useful. And then it has a little thing. Sections in brackets are recent commentary. So there are like sections in brackets where I guess maybe some criticisms were addressed after the first initial publication. And it starts off kind of, innocent enough, where it says, 1, population, the condition. Position, man is but a part of the fabric of life, dependent on the whole fabric for his very existence. Again, it's easy enough, everybody agrees with that. As the most highly developed tool-using animal, he must recognize that the unknown evolutionary destinies of other life forms are to be respected, and act as gentle steward of the Earth's community of being. Situation, there are now too many human beings, and the problem is growing rapidly worse. It is potentially disastrous, not only for the human race, but for most other life forms. Potentially disastrous. Potentially disastrous. So he doesn't know, right? These are just assumptions. That's the first big. Again, extremists write manifestos. And then they have the goal. The goal would be half the present world population or less. And this was in 1969. Half the world population is going to save us, right? Again, very religious-like. It's very overzealous. Okay, and this is the action they suggest in the manifesto. First, a massive effort to convince the governments and leaders of the world that the problem is severe and that all talk about raising food production, well-intentioned as it is, simply puts off the only real solution: reduce population. Demand immediate participation by all countries in programs to legalize abortion, encourage vasectomy and sterilization, provided by free clinics, free insertion of intrauterine loops, try to correct traditional cultural attitudes that tend to force women into childbearing, remove income tax deductions for more than 2 children above a specified income level, and scale it so that lower income families are forced to be careful too, or pay families to limit their number, right? And again, it's like, and there's in the brackets after this, it says in this kind of added commentary, the governments, right, are the wrong agents to address. Their most likely use of a problem or crisis is to seize it as another excuse for extending their own powers. Abortion and should be legal and voluntary, but questions about vasectomy side effects still come up. Great care should be taken that no one is ever tricked or forced into sterilization. Why are we sterilizing people again? Oh, right, to save the world, yeah. The whole population issue is fraught with contradictions, but the fact stands that by standards of planetary biological welfare, there are already too many human beings. What those standards are, of course, are not mentioned in this manifesto. He just knows, right? He just knows. He knows through his ancient wisdom and his leather vests and bead necklaces. Sorry, I'm not going to take this that seriously. I mean, again, the manifesto it's laughably naive. It's an extremist vision for humanity, one that concludes humans must be, that humans are a locus on the planet, right? Again, this is Noah's Ark story, that they must be, civilization is not an evolutionary step in the process, but a cancer that's, inherently evil and comes from humans and all that. It's a total fantasy. And I just have it hard. I find it very hard to believe that a lot of smart people can look at the world and then just have this kind of religious Noah's Ark idea that they just know that civilization and, the problems that civilization creates is not a natural evolutionary step in the process, but actually a cancer, right? A disease. I don't know how you can objectively look at that and say it, but of course people like Snyder here believe it and offer ideas for it. And again, some of them are well-meaning. Some of them are things that I think most people agree with. Sorry, there's a few mentions of things that I wanted to laugh at here. So he has this section where our own heads, right? How do we deal with our own heads? Because again, all of these revolutionary kind of manifestos require everyone in the world to change basic human psychology. That's the solution. Oh, if we had only just thought of it. Okay. But it is hard to even begin to gauge how much a complication of possessions, the notions of my and mine, stand between us and a true, clear, liberated way of seeing the world. Right. Again, and this is this idea that he's kind of pulling from what I would call ancient cultures, Native American cultures, really the concept of ownership that we consider now was unheard of, but people still owned things, little tools and decorations and clothing and rights to food that they killed, etc. But all right, that's beside the point. To live lightly on the earth, to be aware and alive, to be free of egotism. Yeah, this is totally free of egotism, by the way. To be in contact with plants and animals. And I started thinking to myself, like, be in contact with plants and animals. By this, he means oneness, right? He means oneness with the living, everything living. But I'm not sure how one is in contact with plants and animals. And of course, it's not specified in this manifesto because it's just a fantasy. But all right. And then we have a few other things that I thought was really funny. All right. One of the things that live harmoniously and dynamically with nature, blah, blah, blah. One of the things they suggested is cultural and individual pluralism, unified by a type of world tribal council. Division by natural and cultural boundaries rather than arbitrary political boundaries. And I get what he means here, right? Like, this is, again, kind of the Earth First thing where it's like, country borders are made up. They're fabrications. They're just imaginary lines. And there's some truth to that, right? There's some truth to the fact that they are arbitrary. But to fix that, we need a unified by a type of world tribal council. And I'm assuming this is unelected, right? We don't elect this world tribal council. We just, listen to them. Again, this is total fantasy. This is when someone's writing a manifesto, just understand that it is a total fantasy and that person is probably unhinged, and there's probably maybe one or two good ideas that maybe started the manifesto, right? But then it quickly devolves into this kind of new world order bullshit, right? And by a world tribal council, it's unbelievable. And this is always proposed as a solution for these huge, too broad problems that can't be addressed on any individual level. We can't address them on any individual level. So again, you have to have this fantasy that there's going to be some tribal council that's been enlightened through, philosophical musings like Snyder has or claims to have been. And then we're going to fix all the problems of the world. We're going to live in harmony with nature and peace, right? And again, it's snake oil. Like, they're selling you bullshit. Like, if somebody's trying to sell you this, it's bullshit. And I thought it took away from the book to have this type of manifesto in the back of it. I think it's a total childish, not serious way of viewing the world, and it relies on a kind of perpetual state of revolution, which of course is unsustainable. It just isn't enough. It isn't enough. And of course, people can disagree with me on that. People can say, Snyder, he's a genius. Sure, you can think that. I don't think that, all right? I think he's a blowhard, quite honestly. And I don't think he even believes it. If you pressed him, I think he would admit that most of what he wrote in this manifesto can't ever happen. It's a dream world. It's a fantasy. But, okay, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go too hard on it. I don't want to be too much of a stick in the mud about it, so I'll leave it at that.
Inner.
Resources. American resources.
Being bored?
Some activities are intentional, right?
It shows such a lack of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I should say.
Bored.
I am heavy.
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.